Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and welcome to another look at my tarot journals. Today we'll be taking a look at the journal entries I had for July 2019. So we'll start first with my tarot journal and move into my Self-Care Sunday journal. Unfortunately, this month I did not have time to work in my Goddess journal at all, which is a bit disappointing. I did pull a card, but I just didn't have time to work with her. Truth be told, I didn't really feel called to really work with her. I did have her in my sacred space on my altar, and I did try to connect with her periodically throughout the month, but for the most part, it just wasn't happening for me this month, and that's okay. Like last month where I didn't get a chance to do extensive journaling. This month, I didn't have a chance to do it at all, and that's okay. Sometimes that's going to happen. Journaling is not supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to be an exploration of my spiritual practice. And so when that doesn't work out and it just isn't resonating with me, I try not to force that. But I did pull a card. Hopefully my card for August, my Goddess for August, I will connect with a little bit more and we'll be able to work together a little bit better. But sometimes that just happens. So while I did pull a card for my Goddess journal, I didn't actually do anything in it in July, so I don't have that here to show you this time. So for this month, we'll just be focusing strictly on my tarot journals. So let's go ahead and get started with my main tarot journal. Now I have just about finished this journal. It is quite full. I do have various videos on this journal. If you would like to see a complete walkthrough of this finished journal, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll see if maybe I can get one of those filmed. As it sits right now, I don't really have plans to do a complete walkthrough because I have shown this journal from its very beginning through to every month throughout 2019, clear up till, this month. So, you can kind of piece them together that way. But if you'd like to see a complete flip through, just let me know in the comments below and I'll see what I can get done. So getting started, starting with July. So I always use this as my bookmark now for to keep up my monthly page because it just helps. And then I use the little ribbon for my current page. So I like to include that, and it's just, it was a free bookmark that came with my deck, and it works beautifully. So I went with kind of a skull theme for July, at least for this this monthly page, and it just worked for me. I found this image online. I think the creator is Mystic Mama, and if you check out her work online, we'll see if I can find a link to her website maybe, but she has some gorgeous artwork. It looks very much like the Moonchild. As best I can tell, they are not in any way affiliated, but they are extremely similar. Kind of eerily so. But her artwork is just absolutely gorgeous. I love it. So I have my usual calendar with my moon phases, and then I have my card of the month, which for July was the Five of Swords. And as I've mentioned in other decks, I pull cards for all 12 months for the year, but I don't use the deck that I used originally in my monthly draws. I just find a deck that fits with the theme I have for that month, and I just pull that card from that deck. So I have this in here. I have my reflections for the month, which I fill in after, on the last day or towards the last day of the month. I have a list of decks that I have used. And if you can tell, there's this kind of paper, craft paper over the top of this, it's because my original decks list is underneath this and I totally messed it up. I don't know what I was doing. I had them out of order. There were misspellings, and I just obviously was not paying very good attention. So I just put some craft paper over the top of it and made another deck list. Part of the great thing about kind of doing this messy sort of scrapbooking that I've moved towards, which is a little bit different than what I started with. If you check out the original video on this journal, this messier look, this kind of torn paper look, scrapbooky look, allows you a little bit more freedom to kind of mess up and and fix it, overlay over the top of it. Here we have my new moon intention, which I always do on the first new moon of the month. And then moving in, I did my new moon in Cancer spread. This one I did with the Slow Tarot, and I used Ethony's Tarot by the Moon, which I pretty much always use for my moon spreads. And I just did that one on the second, and then every week, I pull an oracle. This month for July, I was using the Mother's Wisdom oracle, which I talked about in my July reflection. So you can find out more about that one in that video. And I just pull, print out, this is a full-size color copy of the card. I paste it into my journal, and I just pick out a couple of key things from the guidebook to include in there, and that's my message for the week. So moving into our first week in July, I worked with the Santa Muerta and the Roots and Wings. And again, I talk about all these decks in my reflections, in detail about working with them. So I just have my daily draws for each one and my weekly reflections at the end of the week. Then I have for the next week, I have my next oracle card. And as you can see, I kind of mix in other tarot readings along the way. Sometimes I will leave, like I'll do my weekly card or my weekly oracle, and then I'll leave this page blank, and I'll go ahead and move on to my my weekly or my daily pulls for the week. And then I'll come back and fill this page in with a spread later on. I don't necessarily always go in chronological order. Sometimes I just work with the pages in the way that it works for the way my book is laid out. So, for me, it doesn't need to be necessarily in order. It's all in here. If the date is important, I do date it if that's something that's really important to the reading. But other than that, I don't really worry too much about being in chronological order. I'm more concerned with actually just getting the information down, making that connection to my cards, and having this mindful journaling tarot practice. That's what's most important to me. So that's really what I focus on. So I have my weekly card here, and then I have just a spread that I did, and this is just my basic inner balance spread. And I'd use the Llewellyn and the Earthbound Oracle for those two. And then here we have the next week where I use the Pagan Otherworlds and the Vintage Wisdom for my daily draws, and I have draws for every day of the week and my weekly reflections. As you'll notice, I do not do draws on Saturday and Sunday. I've mentioned this in other videos. Saturdays I tend to do, if I have time to do a reading, I tend to do bigger readings on Saturdays, and then on Sundays I do my self-care Sundays. So you won't see those reflected in my daily draws. So here we have the next week with my weekly card, and then we had the full moon in Capricorn, so I did that reading. And for this one, I really didn't have a ton of space. I kind of felt the need to elaborate a little bit more on this reading, so I just noted the questions and the cards, and then inside this little flip out is actually my reflections on my reading. And sometimes I do that when I want to elaborate more, but I don't want to take up a ton of the page with writing. I want to incorporate all of these elements as well. So this is a great way to include extra writing into your journal. And again, it's just another beautiful Ethony spread. And then we have moving into the next week where I use my Tildwick and my Botanical Inspirations. Again, all my daily draws and my weekly reflections. And then here I have two spreads that I do on my Instagram. So every month I do, I usually do two because they're usually every other week. These two I put together because they were kind of meant to be used together, and you can find both these spreads on my Instagram. So I had the Summer's Light spread, which I did with the Wooden Tarot, and the Summer's Shadow spread, which I did with the Darkness of Light. And I didn't do these at the same time. I did these on the weeks that I put them on Instagram. So this spread was done 1 week in July, and then this spread was done in the week after. 2 weeks, the 2 weeks after. Yeah, whenever it was that I released them, that's when I did these spreads. But when I did this one, I kept this page blank because I knew I wanted to incorporate this one when the time came to work with it. I just didn't do them back to back because I wanted to give time for the messages of the spreads to, time to cultivate, time for me to think about them and that sort of thing. So I did do them on different weeks. So here we have my next oracle card for the week. And again, just a little write-up and then just a little tag note or tagline from the book itself. And this was a meditative journaling, really meditative scrapbooking, I guess, page that I did where I pulled a card from the Llewellyn. I just made a color copy of it. And then I just did all of this scrapbooking on the page and then overlaid the card on top of it. And I just let the papers that I chose really create that visual message for me. And it's kind of a meditative thing that I like to do when I'm, just need to take a moment to breathe, to disconnect from everything else, and to just have that moment of calm. For me, crafting and paper crafting in particular is it's very mindful, it's very calming, and it's very cathartic actually too, because I do a lot of the torn papers, and it's really cathartic to tear paper. And then you just lay it into your journal, and it works beautifully for that. So that was just sort of a meditative journaling page that I did, just to kind of take a moment and calm. I did that, one day over the week. And then here we have my daily draws for the next week, and I used the Slow Tarot and the Botanical Inspirations. That's a deck that I tend to use quite often for my daily draws, because I like the messages that I get from them, and I like the messages that are in the guidebook. And I have my weekly reflections. And here we have where I did another inner balance spread. And this one, my writing, as you can see, I actually weaved the cards rather than making a list like this where I have the prompt and then the card. I just wove it all into my writing. So I talked about each of the cards and the positions that they were in, and the cards, and then my reflections on it. So it becomes more of a story this way rather than just a list of cards, which I did over here for my new moon in Leo, which is totally fine, because I just needed those little quick hints to pull me into where I was going. This is it's only a 4-card spread, so it's a pretty quick one anyway, and just those quick notes really just helped to tap me into what the message was. I didn't really need to expand. So 2 very different ways of journaling a pull, kind of a storyline here, and then we have more of the sort of bullet point type of reflections. I think both work beautifully, just depends on what your spread is. So then we have my weekly card for the last week in July, and I just again pulled from the book and the messages that really spoke to me through the card and through the book itself. And then I have for the last week of July, I just did the 3 days that were in the last week of July. Now, generally, if a week ends in the middle of the week, I'll just keep going for that week in that month section, and then I'll start with the first week of the next month, if that makes sense. But for this particular one, because I'm nearing the end of this journal, I thought that was just a good place to stop, because I am going to move into a new journal for August. And I've decided that what I'm going to do, because I do have quite a few blank pages here, I counted not quite enough to do a whole month for me, because I do my weeklies, I do my dailies, and I do spreads in between, and a whole monthly layout. So what I've decided to do with this little blank section, so this particular book is going to hang out for a while with me, but I'm actually going to work through my Tarot Elements book, which I have yet to do, but I am planning to do over this last little bit of summer. And I'm going to do work my way through here and do these spreads in this last little bit of this book. So I think there will be plenty of pages to do that. So I'll be able to fill out the book the rest of the way without really wasting pages, but still be able to start with my new book in August. So here, just to show you, just for fun, here is what this book looks like now. You can see it's quite fat because I have added lots of inserts and cutouts and scrapbooking and all kinds of things. Here's what it looks like originally. So I just bought a second copy of this exact same journal. I like to use the same journal through the whole year, and in 2020 I'll switch to a new one and get 2 copies of it. So you can see here, this is what it comes looking like when it's all flat. And this is what I do to it. So quite the difference there, but it's just a lot of fun to really work through these journals this way, and just to do all this lovely fun crafting, all this kind of just journaling. Really it's journaling. It's my tarot journal. So anyway, so that is my tarot journal for July, and I'll be moving into a new journal in August, and then, like I said, finishing up these last few pages with the Tarot Elements book. So that is my main tarot journal, my sort of daily tarot journal. So next up we have my Self-Care Sunday journal, and this is a journal that I do specifically only on Sundays for my self-care readings. And so here you can see I have started in July. Now for July, I have started releasing printables, which include all of these images that I've created and the some printables, some extra ephemera to go along with it. And I've created these little packets. So for July, I used the July packet. Now the packets are completely undated, so you can use them at any time. I just do release them in the month according to how I release these spreads, because I do them every Sunday on Instagram. So I do release the packets according to the months that those are being shown on Instagram, but you can use them at any time because they are undated. Although I do include the date separately if you want to use them along and do them along with me at the same time. So here we have for July 7th, which was how can I bring harmony to being, doing, and having. And with this particular month in July, I actually have write-ups on just little brief write-ups on what each of these mean, because I did a little something different in July with my self-care spreads. I really focused more on this idea of being, doing, and having, which I talk about more in that journaling printable, and you can grab that on my bohotarot.com website. So that for July 7th, and I used my Guardian Angel Tarot. As you will probably be able to tell, I tend to use the same type of decks or the same few decks for my Self-Care Sunday spreads. Just tends to be what happened. So July 14th was Where Might I Be Seeking Scarcity, and I used my Victorian Romantic. And July 21st was What Is My Inner Critic Really Saying, and I used the Moonchild for that one. And as you can see, I had a very kind of summery beach theme for the July printables. And in August, which that is actually available on my website now too, so you can do that along with me this August. And that one is sunflowers. And then here we move into the last Sunday, which was July 28th, and it is How Can I Cultivate More Space in My Life? And I used the Field Tarot, which really I think worked really beautifully with this particular prompt, because it is a very sparse deck. So that was just my few Self-Care Sunday spreads. Again, this is one of my favorite practices that I do. And, you know, if you do it too, I would love to know how it works out for you. How do you go about your Self-Care Sunday journaling practice? I'd love to know. So let me know in the comments below. So that was a look at my tarot journals for July 2019. Hopefully I will have in August, hopefully I'll have my goddess journal to show you as well. And I do have a couple of other journals that I have some videos coming on too that I've been in the process of making. So if you like journaling videos, I definitely have some more of those coming for you. If you'd like to see even more journaling videos, let me know in the comments below, and I will see what I can put together for you. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.